In Genesis 12, 1-9, God calls Abram later, Abraham, to leave his homeland, his family, and everything familiar to travel to an unknown land that God promises to show him. God gives Abram a profound promise. He will make Abram into a great nation, bless him, make his name great, and through him, all peoples on earth will be blessed. Abram responds with faith, obeying God's command. He sets out with his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all their possessions, journeying to Canaan. Once there, God confirms his promise, telling Abram that this land will belong to his descendants. Abram builds altars to the Lord, worshiping him as he travels through the land. This passage highlights Abram's trust in God's plan, his willingness to step into the unknown, and God's faithfulness in establishing a covenant with Abram that has implications for all humanity. The story of Abram's call, found in Genesis 12, 1-9, is a turning point in biblical history and carries a powerful message for us today. God calls Abram, later known as Abraham, to leave his country, his people, and his father's household to go to a land that he will show him. This call is both a challenge and a promise. God tells Abram, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. Abram responds with obedience, stepping out in faith, not knowing where he is going, but trusting in God's promise. In today's world, Abram's call speaks directly to our lives. We live in an age of uncertainty, where people often feel restless, searching for purpose, direction, and meaning. Abram's journey mirrors the spiritual journey many of us face. God's call to Abram to leave behind the familiar is symbolic of the call we all receive to step out of our comfort zones and trust in his plan. Just as Abram had to leave his homeland, we are often called to leave behind old ways of thinking, attachments to material security, or even relationships that hinder our growth. Abram's faith reminds us that trust in God doesn't require having all the answers. In our modern world, we often want to see the entire path laid out before us before taking the first step. But Abram teaches us that faith involves stepping out, even when the destination isn't clear. This is particularly relevant in a culture that prizes control and certainty. Whether it's making a career change, navigating a personal struggle, or seeking God's direction for our lives, Abram's story reminds us to take that leap of faith, trusting in God's promises. The promise that God gave Abram was not just for him, but for all people. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you, God said. This universal blessing points to Jesus Christ, who comes from Abram's lineage and fulfills the promise of salvation for all. For us today, this reminds us that our faith journeys are not just about us. When we say yes to God, our lives can impact others in ways we may never see. Like Abram, we are blessed to be a blessing. Abram's journey also speaks to the idea of waiting on God's timing. Though Abram received the promise of becoming a great nation, it didn't happen immediately. He and Sarai faced years of waiting and challenges before seeing even the beginnings of God's plan unfold. In a world that demands instant gratification, Abram's story reminds us that God's timing is perfect, even when it feels delayed. It's in the waiting that our faith grows and our trust in Him deepens. Abram's response to God's call wasn't perfect. Later in his story, we see moments of doubt and failure, yet God remained faithful to His promise. This speaks to the truth that our faith journey doesn't have to be flawless. God meets us where we are, works through our imperfections, and leads us forward, In a culture that often demands perfection, Abram's story reassures us that it's okay to struggle, as long as we keep moving forward in faith. For those who feel lost or unsure of their purpose, Abram's story is an invitation to listen for God's call. It's a reminder that God's plans for us are good, even when they lead us into the unknown. It's also a call to live lives that are open to being a blessing to others, reflecting God's love and faithfulness. Abram's call is not just an ancient story. It's a living word that speaks to the deepest longings of our hearts today. It challenges us to trust God, step out in faith, and embrace the journey He has for us, knowing that His promises are always true. As Abram's story shows, when we say yes to God, the impact of that yes can ripple out far beyond anything we could imagine, touching lives and bringing blessings to the world.